Tonight, we settle into a quiet room where the only light comes from a single lamp and the only sound is the steady whir-whir click of a sewing machine. This is the story of Afia, a story told not in shouts but in stitches, a tale of a mother's love so deep it could craft a wedding gown by hand, and a daughter's scorn so sharp it could throw that love in the trash. If you're listening all the way through, let me know with a 1 in the comments. Tell me what city you're in. Now let the hum of the machine guide you into a story of silent sacrifice and breathtaking courage. To understand Afia Bakari, you must first understand her silence. It wasn't an empty silence, but a full one, woven with the memories of her husband Kofi's laugh, now 10 years gone, and the dreams she had once spun for their daughter Zuri. Her world existed in a small apartment behind Martha's tailor shop in Charlotte, North Carolina, a space that smelled perpetually of starch, fresh cotton, and the faint metallic scent of her sewing machine oil. Her hands were her voice. Where words failed, and they often did when faced with Zuri's new, polished sophistication, her hands spoke an affluent language of thread and tension. Every garment she repaired told a story: the worn elbow of a working man's shirt, the torn hem of a child's first day of school dress, the delicate tear in a wedding veil that needed to be invisible. She was an archaeologist of fabric, piecing lives back together. When Zuri, her only child, her reason for every pre-dawn and every aching back, called with the news of her engagement to Charles Ellington III, Afia felt a joy so sharp it was almost pain. Here was her chance, not to buy love, but to sow it, to offer the one thing she had that was truly priceless: her craft, her time, her history in every stitch. She presented the idea, her heart in her throat. "Let me make your dress, Akwaba," she said, using the Ghanaian term of welcome from her childhood. "Let me sow my blessings into it." There was a pause on the line, a calculated modern pause. "Well, if you think you can make something appropriate, Mother. But remember, the wedding is at the Grand Magnolia. It needs to be elegant." The word appropriate hung between them, a delicate warning. Afia chose to hear only the permission. What followed were 6 weeks of sacred labor. Afia turned down other work. She spent her small savings on the finest ivory silk shantung she could find, not from a Parisian house, but from a reputable vendor in New York. She traded repair work with Mrs. Chen down the street for delicate Alençon lace. She sorted through her treasure box of beads and sequins, remnants from decades of work, selecting only the most perfect luminescent pearls. Night after night, under the pool of light from her adjustable lamp, she became a vessel of intention. As she sewed the bodice, she remembered holding infant Zuri against her chest. As she set the sleeves, she recalled teaching her to wave goodbye on her first day of kindergarten. In the endless skirt seams, she poured every silent prayer she'd ever whispered for her daughter's safety and happiness. The final secret act was cutting a small heart-shaped piece from her own wedding dress, carefully preserved in tissue paper. She hand-stitched it into the lining over where Zuri's own heart would be. It was a silent spell. May you know a love that endures. The morning she finished, as dawn tinged the sky peach and gold, she held the gown up. It was simple, elegant in its clean lines. It spoke of grace, not grandeur. To Afia, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever created. She wrapped it in a pristine white sheet, carried it like a holy relic on the bus across town, and arrived at Zuri's modern loft. The scene inside was a tableau from a magazine: sleek women in designer loungewear, air kisses, the clink of porcelain. Zuri at the center was a stranger, polished, poised, utterly foreign. "Finally," Zuri said, not arising, "let's see this famous dress." Afia's hands trembled as she unveiled it on the back of a pristine white sofa. The room fell quiet. Zuri approached, her manicured fingers tracing the lace at the neckline. For 3 eternal seconds, Afia allowed herself to hope. Then Zuri's nose wrinkled. "Oh, Mother!" The sigh was theatrical, laced with pity. "It's so homemade. It looks like something a maid of honor would wear in a small-town church, not the bride at the Magnolia." She picked it up between thumb and forefinger, as if handling something soiled. "The lace is quaint, and this silhouette went out of style 5 years ago." Before Afia could draw breath, Zuri turned and dropped the gown, dropped it into a sleek stainless steel kitchen trash bin. The thud of pearls against empty metal was the loudest sound Afia had ever heard. "I've already chosen my dress from a couture house in Paris," Zuri continued, her voice cool and smooth as the marble countertop. "I'm not getting married dressed like a seamstress." The giggle from one of her friends with a tiny, sharp needle to the heart. Afia stood paralyzed. The world narrowed to the mouth of that trash can where her love, her history, her 6 weeks of sleepless devotion lay crumpled on top of coffee grounds and a discarded yogurt lid. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply turned and walked out. The echo of her own footsteps down the polished hallway sounded like a retreat from a battlefield where she didn't know she was supposed to fight. The walk home was a blur of heat and humiliation. The summer sun beat down, but Afia felt a coldness in her bones that reached back to the winter day they buried Kofi. She locked her apartment door behind her and stood in the dim stillness. Her eyes found her sewing machine, her companion, her tormentor, the source of both her survival and her shame. A wave of nausea hit her. She wanted to smash it, to burn every scrap of fabric in the room. But then a different impulse rose, not hot rage, but cold, clear, resolute. It started as a whisper, "Go get it." 2 days later, with the certainty of a sleepwalker, she used her spare key to enter Zori's loft while she was at a bridal shower. The air still held the ghost of perfume and judgment. She went straight to the kitchen. The trash had been taken out. Her heart sank, then seized. The larger outdoor dumpster. She hurried down the service stairs, her practical shoes silent on the concrete. Behind the building, under the buzzing fluorescent light, she lifted the heavy lid, and there, atop black bags, stained with coffee and something orange, was a bundled white sheet. She pulled it out, clutching the damp, soiled bundle to her chest. The smell was of abandonment, but underneath she could still smell the fresh silk. It was alive. She was alive. Back in her studio, she laid the gown on her work table. In the unforgiving afternoon light, it looked pathetic, ruined. But Afia saw the bones. She saw the perfect French seams she'd sewn inside. She saw the hidden heart. Her love was still in there, trapped under grime and contempt. She didn't start that night. She simply sat and stared, her mind not plotting, but seeing Zori as a little girl who thought her mother's hands could fix anything, seeing the vast, cold distance that had grown between them, seeing that her love had become an embarrassment. When the first tear fell, it wasn't from sadness, it was from recognition. This wasn't about a dress. This was about her right to exist, to be valued, to have her language of love understood. The resurrection began not with anger, but with meticulous care. She mixed a gentle solvent to lift the stains. She steamed the wrinkles from the silk with a devotion that bordered on worship. She repaired a tiny tear in the lace with thread so fine it was invisible. Then she began to add, not to fix, but to transform. From her deepest stash, she took things she'd been saving for a lifetime. Check crystals that caught light like captured rainbows, antique silver thread from her mother's tin, tiny freshwater pearls with a luminescent glow. Night after night she worked. She embroidered a cascade of gardenias, Zori's birth flower, along the hem and bodice. She didn't just sew them on, she made them bloom from the fabric. Each petal was a memory. The first time Zori said mama, the skinned knee she kissed, the proud smile at her high school graduation, the sting of the first, "Mom, don't embarrass me." She was no longer sewing a wedding dress. She was sewing a testament, a monument to invisible labor, a biography in thread and light. The wedding day arrived, humid and heavy. Afia had no invitation. Zori had told her, "It's a very tight guest list, very exclusive, you understand." Afia understood perfectly. She dressed with deliberate care in her own best creation, a simple sheath of cream silk. She did her hair. She looked at the transformed gown, now housed in a garment bag, shimmering even in the soft light. It was no longer just a dress. It was a truth made manifest. She took the bus to the Grand Magnolia Ballroom, the garment bag draped over her arm like a silent companion. The venue was a fortress of wealth. Valets whisked away luxury cars. Women in hats floated up the stairs. Afia entered not through the main doors, but through a service entrance she knew from years of delivering emergency alterations to panicked bridesmaids. She moved through the familiar back corridors, the sounds of the quartet and laughter growing louder. She emerged at the back of the ballroom, a shadow among the dazzle, and there was Zori. She was indeed beautiful. Her Parisian gown was a masterpiece of architectural lace and minimalist chic. She moved through the crowd like a queen, Charles at her side. But her smile to Afia's eyes looked painted on, a performance. The gown wore her. Afia watched. She watched as her new mother-in-law, the formidable Amara Ellington, held court. She watched as Zori laughed a little too loudly at Charles's friends' jokes. She saw the ghost of her anxious little girl in the way Zori's fingers twisted her champagne flute. A server offered Afia a drink. "Thank you," she murmured, but didn't take it. Her hands were steady. Her heart was a calm, still lake. She waited for the perfect moment. It came after the first dance, when the crowd was loosened by champagne and admiration, clustered in chatting groups. The spotlight had moved off the bride. Afia walked. She didn't push through the crowd. It parted for her, for the strange, focused gravity she carried. She walked to the very center of the dance floor, under the grand crystal chandelier. Silence rippled outwards, conversation dying in waves. Zori turned, and her flawless composure shattered like dropped crystal. "Mother, what are you—" Afia unzipped the garment bag. What emerged was not fabric, but captured moonlight. The gown, now adorned with its crystalline gardenias and silver vines, threw off spears of light in every direction. It seemed to glow from within. The humble silk had become a canvas for magic. A collective gasp traveled through the room. "Zori," Afia said, and her voice, usually so soft, carried to every corner. "This is the dress I made for you, the one you threw away." She held it high, turning slowly. The light danced over 1,000 tiny points of fire. "You told me it looked poor, that it was shameful." Afia's gaze never left her dollar's blanched face. "So I showed it what poor looks like. I showed it the wealth of a mother's memory, the fortune of sleepless nights, the jewels of sacrifice that no one ever sees." Tears streamed down Zori's face, ruining her makeup. "Please, stop. I am not here to shame you, daughter," Afia continued, her tone softening into something unbearably sad. "I am here to show you what you come from. This dress is my heart, and you can throw a heart in the trash, but you cannot stop it from beating. You cannot stop it from loving you, and you cannot stop it from remembering how to shine."
She let the words hang in the stunned silence. Then, with infinite care, she refolded the gown, placed it back in its bag, and zipped it closed. The spell was broken, but the room was changed. Without another word, without looking back at her weeping daughter or the stunned groom, Afia turned. She walked the same path back through the crowd, which now watched her with awe, not dismissal. She disappeared through the service door, leaving behind a perfect wedding, forever imperfect, and a daughter who had just seen the unassailable strength of the woman she'd called just a seamstress. Afia did not go home that night and celebrate a victory. She hung the gown in her studio, where it glowed in the dark. The phone did not ring, the world did not change, but something had shifted in the universe's fabric. A seamstress had spoken her truth in the only language she had, and in a room full of people who valued price tags, she had taught a masterclass in worth. Her story doesn't end with that dramatic exit. Real healing, like fine sewing, takes time. It happens in small, quiet stitches. A hesitant phone call weeks later, a shared pot of tea that doesn't require words, the slow, painful learning of a new respect. The gown remained, a silent witness in its bag, not as a trophy of war, but as a landmark of the day a mother decided her love was not disposable. It reminds us that the most powerful forces are often the quietest, that dignity is not given, but woven thread by thread from the inside out, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is not to keep silent, but to finally speak. Even if your voice is made of silk and thread, and 1,000 points of light. If this story of quiet artistry and unbreakable spirit held you tonight, leave a 1 below. For more tales that mend the heart and soothe the soul, you'll find 2 more on your screen. Subscribe for your nightly journey into rest. Thank you for listening. Wherever you are, may you remember your own inherent worth, and may your night be as peaceful and as strong as a perfectly set seam. Good night.